Hey folks, this is Paul from Easy Acres Off-Grid Homestead, and I hope you all are well. Finally back with a new video, and I'm as excited as a pig in slop to bring to you, and it's our winter of 2025 update. Winter is a very challenging time, especially living full-time off-grid, and we're really happy to be on the other side of another Southern Oregon winter, and this winter was particularly challenging. On top of the normal chores of clearing brush and debris to prepare the land for another gardening season in the coming spring, we've been putting quite a bit of effort on our little quail enclosure to get ready for more birds. We somehow even found time before the snow came and managed to make some progress with some of our building projects, and I'm excited to show you some of the natural building skills I've been cultivating and working on out here. Up here at 4,500 feet in elevation, we had a huge snowfall this winter that put a real-world test to our building skills, our resourcefulness, self-sufficiency ability, and at times, both of us physically and mentally. So pull up a chair, grab a beverage, and stay for a while, and I'll fill you in on what's been going on down here in the high desert at Easy Acres Off-Grid Homestead. The first chilly nights used to fill me with an uneasy feeling of apprehension when I first moved off-grid, like diet dread. Especially my first winter, the remoteness and the isolation felt a lot more real and almost palpable. But as with most things we fear, with experience and preparedness, many of those feelings give way to excitement and anticipation. Last fall, Grace and I built this amazing little quail aviary, and after some consideration, we decided to do some last-minute improvements to the structure before we got some serious snow. So we've been kind of watching how the winter's going, and we revised the design of the aviary a little bit. Over the top, I did have some shade cloth, but I'm really concerned that if I get a lot of snow, it's going to cave it in. And, you know, I don't want to bury my birds in an avalanche of snow, so I'm going to go ahead and put this poultry netting that I scored on the top of it, and use that to close off the quail aviary from the top. So Grace is up there pulling off the shade cloth, and then we're going to get the netting over it, and quail aviary is going to be in real good shape for winter. And in the meantime, I'm going to go cut some grass and straw for their enclosure. It's getting a little bit more muddy than I like. The quail really actually seem to enjoy the snow, but I don't want the bottom of their aviary or their run to get real muddy, so I'm going to go ahead and cut some straw and put it down there. I feel really strongly that if you choose to have livestock, that it's absolutely your responsibility to keep them in the best conditions that you possibly can and give them the best life that you can. One of the biggest issues that we run into out here is we really don't have a good, safe, dry place to store our belongings. Currently everything is everywhere, stuffed in our vehicles, and we try our best to keep things out of the rain and snow, but it's really difficult. I've been chipping away at this simple pole barn structure almost entirely made from timber that I harvest and mill myself for a couple of years. And, you know, being one of the poors, I can't really afford fancy store-bought lumber. I recommend allowing this natural timber to cure for a year or more, as some of the posts have bent as they've dried over the years. I tend to price function over form in most things, and I don't think a crooked board here or there is really going to be a major issue with this structure. My idea was pretty simple. Just use these long, straight lodgepole timbers for a squarish frame and fill in the walls with milled boards. I wanted the roof to have a steep angle, otherwise known as pitch, to better shed the snow load, which, as you'll see here pretty soon, can be really considerable out here. Here I'm making an important feature of my posts, and that's a simple deadman anchor. In this case, I flattened a section of the post that would be below ground and securely nailed a block of wood to the post. The deadman anchor serves to secure the post, resisting it ever being pulled out of the ground, and it'll keep it level over the years. Any pine wood that touches the ground gets a liberal application of orange oil or boiled linseed oil to help protect it against rot and decay. The posts for the upright portions of the frame are sunk into the ground approximately 20 inches, which is the frost line for my area. Each region is going to have its own frost line, depending on the climate, which is the depth that you need to sink your posts, otherwise they're going to be subject to frost heave. Frost heave is the movement caused by the freezing and expansion of water in the soil, and if your posts aren't dug deep enough for your area, they may shift and eventually lead to structural failure. Consult the great Oracle Google about the frost line in your area. I was given a few bags of this concrete that had been rained on, and I find it excellent material as fill for the bottom and also around your posts. Generally, even heavily rained on concrete like this will still have some effect, mix in with rock and native soil to bind everything together. If I had access to good unset concrete, you know, I'd definitely use that, but being who I am, I just engage the safety squints and hammer away at it. You're going to want to use proper eye protection if you're doing this. A stout metal digging bar is amazing for mixing everything up. Allow the weight of the tool to do the work for you. As this was going to be part of the door frame, I really wanted this particular post to be set real tight and really firm into the ground. I cannot stress enough that having good backfill, rocks and or chunks of concrete will go a long way to making your post last for years to come. In addition to the structural benefits, I believe that the rocks and concrete around your post will guard from insects and fungal attack, as well as repel some of the water that might, otherwise pool and hang out on your wooden post. So having a good backfill is going to prolong its life. In other words, take care of your posts, folks. Now, Grace and I are going to be working on a really large structure in the near future, and this little pole barn has been a fantastic teaching and learning platform for me. In the past, I've been sensitive to online criticism of my building, as I'm not really an experienced builder and I'm historically a poor student, unless I'm actually doing it. Something about the tactile action of doing something allows it to resolve in my brain, and I, just tend to retain it and apply that skill in the future better. That said, I am proud and unashamed of every bent angle on this little structure, and I hope none of you out there ever feel ashamed about anything you ever build. I promise you'll learn every time, and your second will invariably be better than your first. I really took a lot of joy in cutting and fitting these little custom braces in the structure. Letting the available scrap wood and the character of the wood I'm working with where the knots and pockets naturally are, and utilizing what some people would consider waste cutoffs is much more satisfying for me than, having a bunch of typical 45 degree angles everywhere and such. And it gives it a lot of character. I'm planning on putting a little loft in here for some extra rodent resistant storage, and these braces will give me a ton of strength for my loft platform. I'm still unsure what kind of flora that I want to install, and I'm considering flagstone like this here walkway that I'm making, just to keep this area less muddy, or possibly wood. Maybe I'll hew it with this ad set I resurrected from a well-earned rusty retirement. If you want, you can let me know in the comments what kind of floor, stone or wood you'd like to see in this barn, and whatever gets the most likes, I'll go ahead and do it. For at least one of the walls, I wanted to attempt a shingle wall. The first step was to cut these horizontal braces to nail my shingles to. Once I had enough of these horizontal braces, I quickly carved up a simple wooden mallet to use with my splitting froe. A splitting froe is an L-shaped tool with a sharp bottom edge to split wood along the grain. You want to use a wooden mallet as a metal tool, peen the top edge of the froe, as the previous owner of this one did, and it'll hang up and kind of get difficult to get a real clean, even shingle. I've been saving these chunks of incense cedar that have a relatively straight grain to attempt to split some shingles from. The key is having a uniform, knot-free section of wood to work with, and the first step to that involves bucking the logs properly. You want to cut at all the knots along the wood, along the natural lateral growth points, as the knots will cause uneven and improper splitting later on. Now, try as I might, most nails I used on these shingles decided to split, so I made the decision to cheat, and I fired up the generator and broke out the air compressor and my brad nailer. 18 gauge brad nails did an excellent job of securing these shingles without splitting them. Because I had such uneven splitting, both in thickness and how wide the shingles were, I decided to use my little machete to kind of trim them up and custom fit them to fit. And to be honest, I really don't think I did that bad of a job. I feel like learning to split one's own shingles is a huge advantage out here. I just hate to be beholden to big box home improvement stores to provide a roof for myself. I'm definitely going to work at getting better at this. I think it's going to be a great little barn once it's done. I put some clear roofing on the south side of it to catch some sun for passive heating, but it gets some pretty thick afternoon shade, so I don't think it'll get too hot. If you want to keep up the progress of this barn and my homestead in general, I suggest subbing to the channel. I'll continue to put out these seasonal updates, but I plan on doing more foraging and bushcraft content in addition to my regular low-cash, off-grid projects. So for like the first half of the winter, we really had a nice break in the weather where it was pretty uniformly sunny and relatively warm during the day. It was like gosh, almost 50 degrees a lot of the time, but the past 36 hours, it has hammered us with snow, and there's no ending in sight. So this morning, I was just kind of hanging out in the cabin, and I hear this big bang outside. I like felt it through the floor, and I come outside and look, and this tree over here, this juniper tree, had snapped in half up there under the weight of the snow. It came down, snapped all my solar lines, and blocked the access to our rainwater collection. So Grace and I are going to go ahead and chop that up and get it out of the way. Might get back. Now the cool thing about juniper is that these branches are extremely flexible, especially when they're green. They're not gonna snap on us. So what I think we're gonna do is we're gonna pile these up over in the corner, and later this winter or in the early spring, when I start doing some garden beds and want to do some wattle gardens like I did last year, this is excellent material for wattle gardens. These juniper trunks are awesome to save because juniper is an amazing material. It's extremely insect and rot resistant, and you can burn it for firewood, makes decent firewood, but I really like to save it for if I'm building maybe a fence or something like that, where I want like a post that's going to be in close contact with the ground. So I'm kind of cutting this to where it's usable. I'm going to stash it over in the corner and just save it. This is the top half of this juniper tree that you see here behind me that snapped off sometime last night. So I checked out the cabin this morning and I don't see any damage, thankfully, but we'll go ahead and get this chopped up and out of the way. For green branches like this, a coarse tooth pruning saw works really well, and a bit of WD-40 on the blade will help prevent it from freezing and sticking to the wood like you see me struggling with here. So sure as anything, the shade tarp that we had over the quail aviary would indeed have collapsed had we not swapped it out for the poultry netting. The poultry netting has a much wider mesh and has less of a tendency to capture and accumulate the snow and get weighed down and eventually tear off, and my concern was that might bury my poor little birds. That said, this amount of snow, everything got a real heavy snow load this year. We quickly learned how, quote, temporary our, quote, temporary solutions actually were. So there was only a finite amount of snow load that very flimsy roof over my pit house project in front of the cabin was going to take, and we just hit that limit. I think a big clump of snow fell down from one of the trees and blew a whole bunch of other snow on top of it, but yeah, we're seeing quite a bit of snow so far this winter. I was racing the snow to try to clear as much as I could around the cabin and my little outbuildings, the little walkways that we always used before it built too deep. I find this to be a really peaceful and zen sort of activity. I don't just throw the snow around carelessly. I like to build up a good amount of it over my garden beds, especially my cold tunnels, as this is all just water, and I want to save up in the ground for the drier, hotter months ahead. Also, did you know that snow is a fertilizer? It's indeed true. Snow contains a fair amount of nitrogen, well above a negligible amount, something that my sterile volcanic soil really lacks. So we've been pretty well snowed in now for a couple weeks, and we're kind of relying on melting snow for our drinking water. And I was kind of curious. I wonder if a bucket that is wrapped up in some clothing item will melt any faster or slower than a A naked bucket, I guess. Not exactly sure. I would think that insulation would prevent it from melting faster, but I'm just curious to find out. Let me know what you think in the comments, which one will melt faster. I'll let you know at the end of the video. After a few weeks and no sign of the snow melting off and the dog food running low, I knew that I had to make an attempt to get the town to restock, but taking any vehicle out of here was kind of a non-starter. My four-wheel drive truck was buried over the headlights, so my only option was to snowshoe. I knew this had involved an all-day trek of about 12 miles across the mountain with a rucksack on my back, and I'd be lying to say if it didn't bring me back to my Army days a little bit. Grace made me an amazing calorie-rich lunch to haul along with me to go with the extra socks, extra clothing, flashlights, backup fire starters, and two-way radios that I'd be taking with me. Getting to town wasn't too difficult, and I even managed to hitchhike the last couple miles from a pair of hunters once I got down to the plowed county road. But the way home was brutal. Now burdened with a 25-pound bag of dog food, coffee, flour, assorted staples, and daylight dwindling, I did make faster progress following my own tracks through the snow, but I did note that some canid predator, probably a coyote, had been following my tracks sometime after I had made it to town. All in all, though, worked out great, and right at dusk, I made it back to Easy Acres. One thing I did not count on when I built the quail aviary is how many of the little local songbirds are going to sneak in and snatch a bit of food. This dark-eyed junco back here, I think that's what that is. I've caught him inside the aviary a couple times, raiding my quail's little feeder. I was kept pretty busy trying to keep the cold frames clear of snow to capture every bit of that winter sun, which isn't a whole lot, but every little ray of sunshine helps keep my veggies going. A few real hardy ones like cabbage, green onions, and leeks are performing really well, and as a bonus, the green onions and leeks are just replanted grocery store scraps. They've been keeping us in fresh greens at our table even when we can't make it to the grocery store. Grace makes an excellent soup out of these humble, easy-to-grow ingredients.
And the reason I choose to make soup is because by boiling the plant or animal that you're working with, you're really extracting everything that it has to offer you. So I'll be making a simple doenjangguk, which is just fermented bean curd soup, and I'll just slice up whatever vegetables I have. Cabbage goes really well with doenjangguk. And then I'll add some spices and oils to taste. It's good, trust me.
We've been unable to leave the homestead now for a few weeks due to the snow being so deep, but after a string of nice sunny days, the snow was finally knocked down enough we decided to make an attempt at driving to town. The trip out went fairly well, and it's always really interesting to see such a familiar landscape completely transformed by a couple feet of snow. This time of year, you really have to time your travel carefully and try to leave when the snow is still frozen and solid, and try to come home while it's still the same way before they get too wet and slushy in the sun. Except maybe this time I may have miscalculated the daily high and it was a little warmer than I expected. And I did go up a road that Grace was a little hesitant to go up, but I just had to forge ahead, and we enjoyed a lovely trip to town, but we did have a complication on our way back to the homestead. Oh boy. So our first trip trying to make it to town in the truck, we got to town okay, and we picked up all of our supplies, fuel and some groceries, that sort of thing, but we are stuck at the moment. We're stuck bad too, and we're still a good 5 or so miles from Easy Acres, so we're gonna have to get walking here pretty soon. Man, I'm serious, every day's an adventure. So I have a couple blankets, and what I think I'm gonna do is go get a nice stick and make up a couple bindle sacks for Grace and I to carry back to the homestead. Yeah, not how we were hoping today would turn out. We're gonna have to come back and wait for the snow to melt a little bit and dig the truck out, so we'll see. While I worked on the bindle stick, Grace was working on prioritizing our supplies and splitting up the load that we'd be hauling back on our backs all the way to the homestead. I had to sacrifice an old tattered doggy blanket to improvise a bindle sack, but don't worry, Mighty Healer Dog has plenty of blankets. It's important to get the weight balanced, and ideally you want your bindle stick to have a bit of bounce to it. With the bindle loaded properly, it comfortably rests on your shoulder while you can control the load with a single finger. It may look comical, and we all know them from cartoons, but they downright work. These bindle sacks don't just exist in old cartoons, hobos, kits. They're actually pretty practical for carrying a load offhand, and you can switch shoulders really easily on them. The key is getting the right kind of weight and getting the load just right.
My dude, we'll play later, okay? Right now is survival mode.
Yeah, alright, so about 5 miles back. Luckily, it's not too cold. Very, very windy. And sun's going to be setting on us shortly, so we need to be taking the tracks. I think I may have spoke too soon, because as we were walking up I was saying, well, at least it's not raining. And yeah, guess what it's doing now? It's starting to rain. Now it's really starting to come down, and we still have a few miles to go, but we're making decent time. I'll tell you who isn't upset one bit about this whole situation is Maidu dog. Maidu! Maidu! Come! Maidu! Come on! Come! Come! There we go. Yeah, she's not upset about this one little bit. Whew. A few more miles. All right, we've kind of reached the creek, so I think I'm gonna have to give Grace a piggyback ride.
This is a lot of weight.
It's a lot of weight.
I think I should just walk.
Think you should just walk? You wanna go for it?
I'd rather walk with wet feet than risk the possibility of being completely wet, because my body temperature has been dropping.
Okay. Well,
I'm gonna chuck my bag and do it. I can't even jump it.
okay.
I'm just gonna do it. Just
Yeah.
gonna run across.
Go for it. Got it. Now we both have decent boots, but mine are quite a bit higher, so.
Mine's like 1 mile.
Oh goodness. Oh, there's ice underneath too. Saying you should have waited on that sock change?
Yeah, I just didn't think.
Almost home. Look at that sign on the tree there. That tells you where you are.
Difficult street.
All right. Looks like we have made it back to Easy Acres. So, I really dislike getting stuck, but you kind of have to plan for it, especially out here. There's so many variables, so many things can kind of go wrong, and some of those did go wrong for us today, but one thing you always got to keep in mind is how much went right, While we both have wet feet, we had changes of socks, we had water with us, and we knew where we were going, which is a big thing when it comes to getting stuck out in the woods like this. But Yeah, we're back at the homestead now and gonna settle in and maybe play some video games or something. Okay, bucket update. So it's about 3 hours after I initially set them next to the wood stove, which is currently roaring, and covered them with a couple plates just to keep the dog hair out of the water best I can. But I don't know, to me, it's almost looking like the clothed bucket is melting slightly faster than the nude bucket. So, clothed or nude, we'll see. Speaking of water, one of the perks of wintertime out here is the abundance of it. Once that huge dump of snow started to melt off, we had a ton around, and you bet I took advantage of it while it was here. I make a slow, pleasant afternoon of it, loading up my jjigae, this Korean traditional farmer's load-bearing device, with all my laundry supplies, and then spend some time down at the creek rinsing some of the clothing out. Nothing ever goes to waste out here, especially water. Even when I rinse off my hair, I do it over a bucket so I can save it to put in the garden later. I made personal use of the water collecting here in this pool in front of the cabin by running a simple 12-volt RV pump hooked up to a marine cycle battery and running a hose down to a particular filter at the bottom of that pool. It looks kind of nasty, but it's just collected rainwater and snow melt. So there it goes, my fourth and Grace's first winter off-grid in the books. But you know, up here in the mountains of southern Oregon, winter only abates somewhat reluctantly, and I'm sure that we'll see some late snows and surprise frosts well into June. All that snow that we got this year is going to become groundwater for the land this coming dry season, and I'm really eager to see the land green up and blossom this spring. I also have to say I was really impressed with how Grace handled herself during her first winter full-time off-grid, and I'm really excited to see what the future is going to bring for both of us, working more as a team and taking on the homestead. But in the more immediate future, I'm really looking forward to springtime asserting itself finally. I really love watching the snow diminish, the seedlings and the sprouts coming up out of the ground, and the birds and the animals all taking advantage of the longer days and more available food. Soon the fleeting desert wildflowers will be making their presence known, and I'll be able to spend more time out in my garden, working the land to help provide for us. From all of us here at our humble little off-grid homestead high in the mountains of southern Oregon, thank you so much for watching, and I really appreciate all of your support. I'm glad to have you along here on this journey with us, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. In the meantime, y'all take care, be well, and be easy. I know which bucket melted faster.
Which one?
What do you think? Which one do you think melted faster?
The one that wasn't insulated.
The one that was not insulated, so the naked bucket? Yeah, you think so? What do you think might do? Okay, so the one on the left here is not insulated, and that's how far down it melted. And this one here was the one that was insulated. By insulated, I mean covered by my military issue jacket liner, and I don't know. It looks like the naked bucket is a little bit lower than the clothed bucket. So if you want your snow to melt faster, don't clothe your buckets, I guess.